Episode 21 of the Bmoney Beastin podcast. I am here with Landon Reed. He's assistant coach at Heritage High School, Catoosa County, Georgia. Dude, I tell you, man, I think we met, what was it, maybe 5-6 years ago?
Yeah, probably about that.
Up in Cleveland. You know, we reference Cleveland a lot. I interviewed Boskin here about, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks ago. And dude, you are turning into Josh Boskin Jr. with the social media. And dude, that's actually a good thing because you know I've mentioned it several times on this podcast how you have to promote your program, right? Like you have to promote your program. And there's so many programs like, dude, like, and this is, I'm not calling out it. I don't care. I can say whatever I want. Like, you know, we're like, if you look at Ringgold's Instagram, you don't see anything from them unless it's like something, you know, the Georgia Grappler posted or, you know, you don't know what's going on. You look at like, even like Trine's got a brand new wrestling room down there and they rarely post anything. Like they built a brand new facility. Like you don't see anything. So like the only people that know anything about the program is like the people that are in the program. So I think it's imperative, especially in your situation where you're trying to help rebuild this heritage program, to let the community know what's going on. And I see it every day. It's like, hey man, we got club today. We went here, we're doing this. You're from there, right? You wrestled there, correct?
Yes, sir. I first class at like the day it was built. I walked in as a freshman, same as a sixth grader and all that good stuff. So it was a blast, man. I really love heritage. We started the old General for Life thing, and I kind of embraced that as I got older.
Dude, you know, when you have a connection to something like that, I can see why you're working so hard to build it.
Yeah, I think you see it with Bryson and everybody. Wrestling's a sport of like passion. I was talking to the kids the other day. I was like, man, hustling and working hard will make up for a lot of things in this. And I think the same thing can be said when you're coaching it. And that's, like you said with Josh, it's something I took from him. It's just that outwork everybody mentality. Like, you got to put it in social media. You got to put it in, like, teaching kids about their diet, nutrition, and everything that you can find. He was dead right about that stuff. Be passionate about it, outwork everybody about it, and you'll have success.
Well, we were talking about, you know, I was around up there when Jose and Dominic showed up, right?
Yep.
And I remember, you know, to this day, if I had a kid that I could adopt, that would be the perfect practice partner for Bryson. It's Dominic Romero, right?
Yeah.
They have some insane goes at times up there in Chattanooga, man. Like it's nuts, and they just match up so well. And I think it's because they've wrestled each other so much for so long, but at the same time, they just match up so well. And I remember when they first showed up, but I didn't know the backstory, and Boskin was telling me about it. Like, yeah, man, Dominic was in my beginner, which I knew he was in the beginner program, right? Like Cleveland does an amazing beginner program, and he's like, and I couldn't believe he said this. You know, props to Jose, but he's like, there's this dorky kid up in the stands with glasses on, and he's like, who is that kid? And he's like, well, this is Dominic's brother. And it turned out that Dominic, they were only doing this for Dominic. And then they were home with a mat, and Dominic was beating the piss out of Jose. And he's like, yeah, I don't like this. So I'm going to get in there. I think he's a 2-time state champ right now. So, like, dude, like, structuring the program, like I've said that a lot, it seems like Heritage now is kind of getting a grasp on the entire circumstances of the program, right? Like you see a club. Like I've said it before, not every kid in any program can always get to a training center, right? Or another club somewhere. So, you know, not only for, you know, able to get there, you know, physically, but economic issues. And like, there's a lot of reasons behind that, you know, mom and dad work, you know, they can't make it, whatever the case may be. And when you can build that from within, you're only going to like strengthen your program. So on an average week, this is where I want to start with this. What do you do in an average week? Because you're involved in the high school. Who's doing the middle school? Are you part of the middle school at all? And the club, like I know you run the club. So like take me through your average week since you've been back at Heritage.
So right now we're in preseason conditioning, right? With our high schoolers, we can only have about 4 of them in the wrestling room, wrestling at a time. So we're trying to follow those GHSA rules.
Yeah.
And we're going 2 days a week that. So keeping them pretty busy outside. And I'm going to walk inside from these dogs.
No, it's all good.
They got some Rottweilers and they're chirpy today.
Oh, good, dude. There we go.
There.
All right, so we were talking about the high schools going to 2 days a week per GHSA rules. The middle school, who's running the middle school? And I know you're running the club. Like, kind of tell me the structure now within that program.
So Jeremy Hunter is running the middle school now. I think he wrestled at Wisconsin Lakeside in college, and he is doing a phenomenal job. I think he was like Teacher of the Year last year for Heritage.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's amazing at it, man. He's so structured and organized with the kids. Most of them love him, and it's like, if not all of them, I think would be the right word for it. So they've really rallied around him. I think our middle school this year had 90 something kids sign up, which is like by far records numbers for that middle school. We're close to record numbers with the club and the high school. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but we're close. We're chipping away at it. So,
dude, if you have 90 kids, and let's just put this in perspective, you have 90 kids sign up at middle school, you're probably going to keep probably 50 ish, right?
Yep.
And dude, if you got 50 kids in a middle school wrestling room, that's pretty big, man. Like, even last year, like Ringgold's middle school had a ton come out, and then they were, it thinned out throughout, the first 2 or 3 weeks or whatever, which I think Murdoch ran off a lot of them with conditioning. I think Derek was just like, dude, I got to thin this out. And like for 2 weeks, all they did was like run hill sprints and whatever. So like, but yeah, like to whatever the numbers are now, of course, are thin out, but to have numbers that big to start off with, that shows wrestling's like growing, and wrestling's kind of been growing in the county, like for a while now. Like, Ringgold was a powerhouse back in the early to late 2000s. And, Heritage won a state championship with, was it Kenny Hill?
Yep, it was Kenny Hill.
And, the only, and I'm going to say this because, like I said, I'll say whatever I want. LFO is the only program in the county that's really hasn't made any strides in the past, couple years, 5, 6, 7 years. It seems like, go ahead.
Listen, I hate to be that guy. I'll stand up for Welborn right now. The women's side of it has grown over there. And it takes time, like obviously. I mean, you know how that goes. It's almost a 6-year plan to even a 10-year plan with some programs.
Yeah.
And I think they're missing the kids program right now. And if that starts going, I know they've got a lot of kids that go to Rabbit, and obviously he does a great job with them. So
yeah, I love Rabbit.
Yeah. So I think they've got some kids now that are tough. And they had, I think, about 5 or 6 up at Southeast Regionals this year. And that to me was like, that's signs of growth.
It is.
Even, and I told our kids this, even if you do go in 0-2, okay, that's not what we want, right? That's never the goal. But you have to expose yourself to that stuff to see it.
Right.
You got to start somewhere. And it's like, I hope you don't go 0-2. And thankfully, we haven't had very many of those at these tournaments, but a couple times.
Yeah.
From there, it's just like, they've experienced it and they've started to grow with it. And I've seen them compete better in those tough matches with tougher kids. So,
of course, yeah. You have to put yourself in a situation like, even like when Bryson was little, his first tournament he ever went to, and dude, all he knew how to do was shoot a double leg, which wasn't even a double leg. It was more like a football tackle.
Yep.
And he knew how to run like a half, and he didn't even know how to run a wrist in half. He just knew how to run a half. And I remember he tech falled some kid, and he didn't even know that he was tech falling the kid. He just knew that I have to tackle him and run a half. You know, he's like 5 or 6. But I put him in an open tournament right off the rip, right? Like right off the rip. And it was funny because the next day was like a beginner tournament, and I put him in that, and then he went to a beginner tournament like the next day. And that day before, like, granted, it ended kind of funny. He was wrestling for like third, and he got mad because he was winning like 13-2. He was about to tech fall this kid, and he ended up, the kid come back and tied it because he had no idea what was going on. and he's like, I won, right? And the ref's like, we got overtime. He's like, and he threw his headgear and he walked outside. But the next day, like in the beginner side of it, it was like, he was just killing those kids. He's like, you know, so, and that was in like a 24-hour period. I remember that.
Yep.
And it's like, so you kind of, and even like with young kids, because you got the club, dude, I think that's a great thing. Like, you know, I don't know what your plan is for their season, but like if you take a ton of them up to like the top 100 when they have one in Chattanooga, right? Like, dude, the last couple of years, you know, Tennessee's pulled like a ton of kids. Like one year up there, they had kids from Iowa and Illinois. Mm-hmm. Like, and it was local. If you can have that locally, dude, like the Tyrant Scuffle downtown, they always pull a ton of kids. Like, you can get that exposure and kind of keep things, you know, economically, whatever, for, you know, the parents. But dude, I'm with you, man. Yeah, you take them to all those things, you know, and you have to experience those ups and downs. Bryson's first year at Tulsa, he went 0-2. Me and Boston talked about it. He was on the bottom end of the age group, and I was like, well, what do you weigh? I don't know, 66. He went like 64, which we learned really fast. That was stupid, right? Like, he was so small. And the next year he went, I think he weighed like 80. He went 70, and he placed 5th, right?
Right.
So it's like one of those things where you kind of have to, you know, you were talking about nutrition and things, right? Like, you kind of got to, as you bring these kids up, kind of educate them. And it seems like you're on the right path with that, right? Like, you know, hey, and Josh should have told me too, because like he was like, what, 8, 9? I don't know. I don't know, dude. Like, I ain't never been out there. What do you want?
Yeah.
And Austin's like, oh, dude, 64 is cool. I'm like, man, you should have said like 58 or something, you know, like 55. But you know, it's all good. We laughed about that when we were recording our podcast. But yeah, dude, it seems like you're on a good trajectory here. And you know, the only reason I brought up LFO was, you know, we lived in Rossville for quite a while, right? You know, he grew up down there, and I had a little house down there. We moved back to Ringgold, you know, prior to high school, and that was kind of always the plan, I think. And, you know, I seen the economic challenges,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in Rossville, and then, you know, that part of that side of Fort Oglethorpe there, like there is a lot of economic challenges. And like, I tried to help them get like the Ridgeland Wrestling Club off the ground. If you ever see the middle school wrestle, they have like red and black and blue and black singlets. I actually bought those for the Ridgeland Wrestling Club like a few years ago. And, you know, the whole Bmoney Beastin concept came out of Rossville's wrestling room. They had, you know, they had like 50 kids or whatever it was. And then after a week, you had about 25. And out of those 25, there was probably 15 or 20 didn't have shoes. And that's where we started producing the shoes. And we wanted to kind of give back, kind of thing. But that's where all this whole thing kind of came from, was seeing these economic like hardships. And so it wasn't necessarily a bash at LFO, because I think they face a lot more of that than we do on this end. It was more of it just seems it just has always kind of seemed a little unsettled over there. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does.
But as a county, I think there's a lot of great kids in our county. You know, Harrison Murdoch's actually in your district.
Man, I know.
And dude, he's at Christian Heritage, and you know, that's our dog, man. We grew up with Harrison. Like, I love that kid, man. He's so funny too, dude. Like if you get to know him, he's the greatest kid. You know, Billy Hamilton's at Ringgold. You know, like there's a lot of good kids like in this this little circle pocket here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they put Ringgold and Heritage together, it would be a freaking super team.
Oh yeah, man. My freshman year in high school, the state tournament, I was at 103, and all 4 kids from our region in the Ringgold, Lakeview, and Heritage placed top 5 at state that year.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So that's like been my lasting memory, really. This is how it's supposed to be. Like as I came up, I understood it as us 3 teams are supposed to be amazing every year, regardless. And you know that's not realistic, but you want it to be, and you hope
Right.
for it to be, especially in our county because it, like you said, we have a ton of great kids and a lot of good wrestling talent around here, and we have the resources with Minions, Grindhouse, UTC itself with all the college kids that I'm sure are willing to give private lessons, and just the amount of good coaches we have around here in high schools and middle schools as well now. I was looking around at that the other day and realized like most of the middle school coaches have college wrestling experience in our little area, and it's like there's really no excuse, but we got to be pretty good.
Dude, you know, I'm going to give Derek some credit. When I met Derek Murdoch, you know, I moved down. You know, last year I still had that kind of sour taste in my mouth for middle school wrestling as a whole, right? Like, you know, I was like, I don't know if this is worth even doing, right? Like the last few years, that you know, like at a certain point, it's almost like I remember this as when I was in middle school. You know, when I was in middle school, I got pounded by kids that were like kids like my kid, right? Like, you know, it's what it is. And I'm like, okay. So I don't know about this. And I told Derek when I first met him, I said, dude, we're not going to do all this. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, we're just not. And he says, just bear with me. Just bear with me. And I'm like, And all of a sudden, like I'll give him credit. Like he took that middle school team to a lot of stuff that was outside of like that little league. Like we went and wrestled like Pickens and Jefferson and like all these other schools. And it was a really cool, for a team kind of thing, it was a really cool experience. And I was glad that we were part of that like team last year. And then we went to the state duels, which was really cool, you know, and for a lot of those kids, man, like, you know, like I'll give like Bryson and Luke Jones and like maybe Bo Green was on that team, you know, maybe those 3, maybe one more, you know, that had been in like kind of in that environment already. But outside of that, the rest of that team had never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
Right. So like it was exposure, and you know when it was kind of blind exposure, and I thought it was kind of genius. Never like the thing that was cool about Derek is he never like promoted this as bigger than anything else we have done. So all these kids didn't know the difference. Does that make sense? And they just went out and wrestled. So it was like it was really. And some of those kids, man, won matches that honestly they probably shouldn't have. Like. And it's like, dude, this is pretty cool. So like, it was a cool year to be a part of him. And I tell you what, man, he's very like blue collar, and he's very, like I said, I keep busting his chops about the social media thing, but I'll tell you right now, man, like he is a good one. And I think he'll build something over there long term, you know, like he's dead set on like, I want to build this middle school program to be like a powerhouse to build up, which is great, you know, and there's a lot of athletes over there, same way there is a Heritage, right? So, I mean, the kids are there to do that with. So, dude, you're what's the plan? And I'm curious about this. You got the little club going, and from there, you know, it'll probably run. I guess you guys will wrestle like, you know, a couple like top 100, some of those Georgia League tournament kind of things. And then when the regular folk style season ends, are you guys going to try to build like a freestyle Greco program, like within the program?
Well, that's my goal at the end of the day. You said it. Not everybody can afford Minions. Not everybody can afford Grindhouse. I think Sean and Matt do a fantastic job.
They do. Yeah.
Making it affordable. But like from the teaching aspect inside of it, I do see kids. It's not just the affordability of like the business, but the transportation, the brothers and sisters that need to be cared for, and all that good stuff that comes into play too. So having things at the local school that's 5 minutes from the house, walking distance, or a buddy can drive you there. That's important too. And that's one thing we're trying to grow at Heritage. We had one last year, but it was mostly because I can't coach the high schoolers at that point. So I stuck with the middle schoolers. And I think that's kind of where I'm going to keep going with it and keeping those 8th graders and helping them get ready for 9th grade and using that spring and summer period as like a transitionary period. But I've got a couple people I've talked to that I'm pretty confident could run a nice freestyle and Greco program out of the room. So we'll see where that goes.
That would be really cool because, like, you know, I think last year Michael Keefe did like a couple days a week at Ringgold. I think he did last year. And then, of course, when I was interviewing him a few weeks ago, which I've known him a long time, you know, I'm a Ringgold guy. But when I was talking to him, I was like, dude, why'd you take off, man? He's like, but, you know, he's the new head coach of the new Dalton Academy down in Dalton.
I saw that. That's pretty awesome.
Dude, you know, like I'll give him credit, man. Like his story is phenomenal, man. Like phenomenal.
Yeah, it really is.
I knew the story. Me and Pitts argued about it one time. I was like, he's like, nah, dude, he started in like 7th grade. I'm like, bro, I'm telling you right now, it was like freshman year of high school. They plucked him out of the. Nah, man, that ain't right. And I'm like, Michael, what time? What? And I asked him on a podcast, and then I even called out Matt. I was like, yeah, dude, I was right. 9th grade. So when you got a guy that, and you know, I attribute it, and even I think Michael did, to him being a twin, right? He had literally a built-in practice partner. But in 6 years, roughly 6 years, he went from what's a double leg to placing 5th in the toughest tournament in folk style in the world. Like that's a movie, dude. Like that needs to be a movie. Like what he told me about how he would break. I didn't even know this. Him and Josh would break into the Ringgold wrestling room at like 11 o'clock at night. He said they'd break in and just start training. He said they were obsessed. He said, we do this all the time, 5 o'clock in the morning till midnight, whatever. Like we're just always doing it. And, you know, for a guy like that, man, and he's a great guy and he's really good in his faith. Like I root for that program and I hope he does well down there. But back to this, man, you're kind of building this thing up. Where did you get your knack for social media and how did you learn that it was important from Josh from Boston?
Dude, that's all Josh. That is 100% Josh Boston and the dudes up at Cleveland. And a little bit Caleb Myers when I was at Science Hill. I think he did a good job of introducing me to it and making it important and like teaching me that the kids value it. Even when they say they don't value it, they care because they're the ones liking it and like being the first to share it. Like they want to see themselves get bragged on by other people they look up to. They want to see themselves be bragged on by adults. So,
a little bit of dopamine, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember when I was in high school, like as social media started coming around and like my mom would post a picture of me here and there, it was a little shot of dopamine. Like I loved it. And even though like, you know, it's your family member doing it, it's still cool to see yourself out there on the internet doing what you love. So yeah, I think that's important. And then Boston just did such a good job of showing me that like you can blast that stuff every day and not feel guilty about it. You're doing a good thing for the community. You're providing a service that's cheap and efficient and helps kids get things that they need and deserve. So it's not a big deal to post 3 times a day on a Tuesday about club and results and upcoming schedule.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's been the biggest thing for me is having that little Instagram handle of the Heritage Wrestling Club. Instead of it just being my face, I don't feel as bad posting stuff constantly about it.
Dude, you know, with Bmoney Beastin, until I started this podcast, nobody's seen me, right? Actually, they seen my buddy back here, MB, the green guy. That's all you see. That was it. And there was a reason for that. I wanted it to feel like its own kind of entity, the same way you were talking about, you know, your Heritage Wrestling Club. But then I realized, I was like, man, I wanted to do this. And, you know, it started out, it was going to be me and Bryson, and we were going to, you know, interview people and do things. But then as time went on, it got harder and harder to find time to get him to keep him on here. Like he's always doing his own thing and got, you know, I was like, you know what, dude, I want to learn about other people and what they're doing and how they got here and all that kind of thing. But I was looking, and he like right now it's what a Saturday morning, and he got hurt, so we didn't get to qualify for Super 32, or that's where we'd be right now. So he's sleeping, and he's going to go do volunteer work today at the Catoosa County Rec. So
Hey, listen, that's something that's like I've thought a lot about actually. I know they give out volunteer cords for when you hit your volunteer hours in high school, and that's one thing I'd like to promote with our wrestling team at Heritage is like find ways to give back to Ringgold, like clean up the creek or volunteering at the local churches to help babysit kids or playing with the kids at local elementary schools. Just anything for them to volunteer and give back to the community. Because wrestlers, like, let's be honest, we get a bad rep, We're usually a little bit of a punkish bunch that kind of stick it to the rules a little bit here and there. So
I got one, trust me.
No, I get it. I get it. Listen, I promise I get it. But that's one thing I'd like to really do is help get those kids out in the community doing good things. We just did our H2O day at Heritage Middle, and I had a bunch of 7th grade boys and girls at a horse farm shoveling mud and filling in potholes in a dirt road. And I was amazed by how hard they worked. It blew me it blew my mind, man. I thought I was not looking forward to it. I was like, I'm about to go shovel mud by myself for an entire day, have to probably wheelbarrow it. Nope. Those kids got right to work, man. So they're capable of it. And I think it puts a good name behind your program too.
Absolutely, dude. Like I'll say this, at home, my son is lazy. Okay. Only because, for his entire life, I've done his laundry, made his meal, which he does cook from time to time. I'll give him that, right? But he doesn't clean his dishes, and then I yell at him, right? Like, hey, dude, this stuff's in the sink, right? But in general, at home, he's lazy, and when he goes to the wrestling room, he works hard. When he's like doing workouts, he'll work hard when he does workouts or whatever. Which Sean Russell told me once, he's like, me and Bryson are a lot alike. I said, why? He says, we don't want to work out. We want to wrestle. Mm-hmm. That's just how he is. Like, dude, if he never touched a weight, he wouldn't care. But, that's just people are like that.
I get it.
Yesterday, and I'm sure, and I'm not going to go into big detail here, but I'll kind of beat around the bush a little bit. I'm sure you've seen, we have an issue right now. And we don't know what's going to happen with that. But I self-imposed and told him, you made a bad decision here. And, I love you. And I know, whatever, but you're going to have to give back and pay for it in some kind of way. And I self-imposed 100 hours of community service on him. I said, I'm going to find you situations. I'll call everywhere. And I think it's going to help you in a lot of different ways. And even if things don't work out the way you want them to, you're gaining experience and you're seeing people that are less fortunate than you are. You're seeing situations, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And yesterday he spent maybe 3 hours. I found out about it like late in the day because I had called all over the county. I'm like, first I was trying to get him at the library to like maybe put up books or whatever. And they said, well, he's a year too young. And then I called the Humane Society. He's a year too young. And I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to give you free labor here. Help me out.
Right.
And eventually I got to a church down in Ringgold, and the church told me about Christ Chapel in Ringgold.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, what's that? And she told me where it was at. And I called, and this really nice lady answered. And I said, listen, my son got in some trouble. I said, I want him to give back. I want him to really learn here. And she said, yeah, he can come help us. I dropped him off, I want to say at like 11:45 or something like that. And I picked him up at like 2:30. Dude, he was getting it, man, moving cases of soup and sweeping floors and boxing up clothes and hanging clothes. And like, this is a place for less fortunate people that can come and get things they need. Mm-hmm. And that's who I was talking to actually right before we got on, the lady there. I was like, okay, we'll be there Monday. Last night I got a call from where I'd left a message at the Catoosa County Rec, and he said, we got a big softball tournament. Can he be here from 12 to 5 tomorrow? I said, yep, he can be there from 12 to 5 tomorrow. So like, I think at the end of the day, wrestling is what we all love and value and things. there's a lot more to life than that. Like that, I'm glad we're actually on this topic, right?
Yep.
We always, and I've always been that way too. Like if you ask Boskin, I was nuts back when he was little, dude. Like I was crazy, man. Like Matt Pitts used to throw me out of the room all the time, and he'd like cuss at me and get the out of here. And then after it was over, we'd like shake hands and hug each other, or
Yep.
whatever. But like, I was like at a point, it was like, this is all that matters. And I don't know why. I think it was just like, man, I wanted him to just be as successful as he could be and have a better life than me. And I thought, well, this is the only way. And along the way somewhere, I'm talking to parents now, like, and I think you'll understand this. You got to let kids kind of, when they fail, let them kind of handle that and not make it worse. Because I think the way that I handled it when he was younger, I think for a while it kind of handicapped him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like kind of like a fear of failure. And there's matches he wrestled that he didn't wrestle good at all because he was so worried about the result and not just doing it.
Yeah.
And
I harp on our kids about that so much. It can't be, you cannot get in your head about, I got to win. Because you don't. It's a sport, man. It's like, at the end of the day, look up like the dictionary definition of sport. It's entertainment. It's just, I'm just here to have fun and entertain you. And if it gets to be deeper and more than that, you're just putting so much more pressure and anxiety and stress on yourself. And like, I remember in college where we learned about stress, and we learned that stress is basically a toxin in the body. And then you wonder about these kids have performance anxiety, and you like put that into that and understand what that means. Like these kids are almost poisoning themselves to the fact that they're like so stressed out, their blood pressure's so high, their heart rate's so high, and they're literally going out to like do something that they quote unquote love to do. And it's like, guys, relax. Mistakes happen. How do you make up for it? So I have a coach at Science Hill that used to say, fix it all the time. And I really use that a lot now because I don't care if you take a bad shot. I don't care if you make a bad grade. How are you going to fix it? Because that's what life is. Like we all make mistakes constantly. How are you going to fix it and move on from there?
I'm glad you said
that's hugely important. So
I'm glad you said that about mistakes. All right. And I'm only saying this, and again, I'm not going to go too far in the detail. I don't think, and I'm not condoning bad behavior. I'm not condoning, bad things, right? Or bad choices. I don't think, I don't think you can pigeon you remember when you were 15 years old?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I get reminded of it a lot by people. So
when I was 15 years old, dude, I think it was around there, and I'm not ashamed to say this, I've been, I had a rough go. I kind of went down a bad road when I was about 22-ish, right? And I got it fixed before I was 23, and I've been good and on a good path ever since. With that being said, though, when you're 15, you're exposed to a lot of things that maybe you haven't been previously exposed to. You meet new people because you're a freshman in high school and you're an impressionable kid. And I made a lot of bad choices. Granted, I got away with a lot of bad choices that I probably shouldn't have. But I think that, and I'm bringing this up because, again, I don't care what I say. And I hope the whole county sees what I'm about to say. The structure of kids that make bad or poor choices in the county of Catoosa, they throw them away. They don't try to help them. They throw them away. And if you remember being 15, it's hard, right? You're hitting puberty. No telling what's going on in your life, right? With your parents or whatever's going on. You're trying to fit in at school. You might have a girl that likes you or didn't like you or whatever. Like there's a lot of, factors and emotional, things going on. And dude, to pigeonhole kids and instead of like helping them and say, hey, this is an issue. Let's try to figure out how we can make it better, how we can improve the situation. They're just throwing them away. They're just like, here, this is who you are. This is where you go. And this is how it's going to be. And at the end of the day, that is not at all helping build good people. It's not. It's actually counterproductive. And yeah, right now I am talking about Bryson, but he's not the only one, right? He's not the
Sure.
only
Yeah.
one. When you and you know, at the end of the day, even as a public school system, the public school system should look at kids, and there are extreme cases, right, of whatever it may be, right, extreme cases, but in general, when you have kids that are struggling with something, or you have kids that you know do something that didn't harm anyone else, don't throw them away, help them, right, help them, and don't strip them of who they are, because idle hands is like the devil's playground, right? If you have a kid that did something wrong and then you take away the only thing that's bright in his life, what do you think's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
What do you think's going to happen?
I'm following you there.
So, I'm not saying don't punish kids. I'm saying don't throw them away. That's all I'm saying. Like, when you see it, you coach kids, you coach younger kids, you remember being a kid.
Oh yeah,
dude. Like, it's hard. Like, being a kid's hard. Being a teenager's hard.
And it's not getting any easier. I'll give it that, man. I've watched kids struggle and grasp the concept of cell phones since they came out, really, for me. And
social media, it puts so much pressure on kids.
Dude, you're not kidding. Like, it's forever, and you make one quick bad decision and it's stuck. And that's what I've been preaching that lately too with our kids. Almost like once or twice a week. Guys, like, what you post, what you say nowadays is so freaking important. You know what I mean? You got to think before you say.
Following high school kids, man, like from the time they're in 9th grade now, right?
Dude, when I grew up, not having a filter was just annoying. You know what I mean? Like, if I said blurted something out or just said something, okay, dude, you're not. Nowadays, we're seeing the consequences of not having a filter, and these kids are going to jail and getting charged with felonies and all sorts of other stuff. Like, the world we live in isn't the same, and it's starting to change in a quick way. And these kids, I tell them every day, man, you gotta think before you speak and act. You have to. It's so freaking important. Because if you don't, like, whatever happens next in a blink of an eye will change your life. It could be a good way. It could be a bad way.
We live in this cancel culture, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the thing that's, and what's terrible about that, in my opinion, is that not every round peg fits in a round hole, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the world we live in wants to pigeonhole every single kid the exact same, as if we're building an army of people that are identical, almost like that. That meme on Facebook, or meme, or whatever I call it meme. Bryson says I'm wrong, but there's a meme or whatever that goes around, and it's got Buzz Lightyear in a box, and then 10,000 other Buzz Lightyears, right? Mm-hmm. Like side by side by side. That is not fact, right? We are all very, very, very different. We don't all fit in that round hole, right? Like, it just isn't a thing. Like, for instance, when I was in high school, dude, I was a terrible student. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, dude. I'm not a stupid person. I'm not, I didn't care what happened in 1810. I didn't care what XY squared to the whatever was. I didn't care, right? Like, I just didn't arouse my senses, all right? And that's okay, because we're all different, right? I wasn't going to be a math major or a history major or whatever. But so you can't, and that's just using me, but everybody is different, and they have different strengths and weaknesses, and they have different things that like tug on their emotions, and they have different things they struggle with. There may be a girl out there struggling with an eating disorder, and then you might have a kid over here that's struggling because his dad left, and you might have another kid. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's circumstances. So this cancel culture of trying to fit everybody in one spot, and if you don't fall in line, then that's it. That is not building a good next generation at all. It's not. It's teaching us to be obedient to what somebody else thinks. Do you agree with that?
Here and there. I think a lot of it comes down to I'm seeing it more as a teacher now, and it's crazy. Like there's a lot of things I used to fight, and like you said, man, when I was 15, I was a buck wild teenager,
Right.
and now as a teacher, like just I don't know. I really don't know. Like there's something I like to be lenient. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
like to let the kids be loose, and I'm seeing it really now as a club coach. That's an even better example. Like I don't like to be the group punisher. Okay. When I was in college, we had to do a lot of sprints. Everybody on the line. I remember, my God, I still hear "on the line" in my dreams, and it's terrifying. So I hate punishing a group for one or two kids acting out, whether it be lazy or being crazy or talking out in class or not drilling hard enough, whatever it may be.
Right.
But here we are 9 weeks into my first year of teaching, 2 years in at Heritage with the club without a Josh there to help and back me up. I'm starting to see you do have to like crack the whip a little bit on us. Like, I hate to say that, but like come down on some of these kids, because if you don't, you start to lose that culture that's like productive and good for everyone. So I don't know.
I think
You're
it.
right. Like, I don't want to pigeonhole kids. I think that's
Right.
terrible, because even with wrestling, you see, if I try to make a system of wrestling for Heritage High School, right, I have to be extremely broad with that brushstroke, or else I'm going to handicap the kid that's really good at throws, or I'm going to really set the kid back that wants to ride legs and be really good at it. So we fight that constant battle of, I need you to be in this box that's like productive, but I also want you to be able to think outside of it and be creative and be you and your specific brand of you.
Right.
So, and I have a couple kids right now that I talk with a lot about that kind of stuff, where it's like, is what you're doing productive? Is it helping others? Are you building a longer table? Are you bringing more people with you? Because if you're not, you're wasting energy, you're wasting time, you're wasting talent. And, that's a rough reality. But now that I'm 30, that's something I wish I could go back, and I know people told me, but I wish I could smack myself upside the head and be like, bro, listen, they're right. They're right. Listen to them. Because there's a bunch of stuff I wish I could redo.
I
And
think we all do, man. Looking back at it, like we all make bad choices and should
yeah,
have done this instead of that. And hindsight's 2020. And I agree with what you mean. There needs to be a disciplinary
right.
situationally.
And I think you said it best. I don't want to ever throw away a kid.
Right.
Like, we have laws for a reason. You're not allowed to drink alcohol till you're 21. All the other good stuff, right? That's because your brain's not fully developed.
Right.
So I think we can't have that on one hand, but on the other hand, he made this dumb decision. This is where he is now. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what you want out of him. His brain's not fully developed. I could have seen this coming. Like, I thought we all could see it coming. So that's where you said it best. We got to find ways.
I think addiction in 2024 it is becoming, and you brought up alcohol, so I'll bring up addiction, right?
Yeah.
Addiction is becoming in 2024, and you see it like in schools, because you're in a school, you see the vape pandemic, right?
Dude, it's a pandemic. We had the pandemic. I'm telling you, people, there is another pandemic. It's in our school bathrooms. It's constant. Those kids, they can't stop. They don't know how to stop.
The problem is even in here's the thing. When we were kids, and I'm glad we're talking about this too, because this is something that needs to be talked about, and I hope people hear what I'm saying and what we're saying here. When we were kids, and I'm about 6 years older than you, but we're from around the same ish generation.
Yeah.
I'll say this: if on the weekend you drank a beer with your buddies, you snuck a 6-pack or whatever at a fire, or maybe an extreme case, somebody had a little bit of weed and you're like, oh, this is cool, let's eat a pizza and fall asleep, right? Like, that was about the extent of it, right? Because things weren't so easily accessible, right?
Yeah, to work for it.
Yeah, it was like you couldn't get a hold of these things. Now, dude, I'll just give you an example. There was a kid that was friends with my younger son that took his mom's credit card, got online, and ordered like $400 worth of like THC vapes and oils and whatever, and they just shipped it to him. Like, you're talking about a 12-year-old kid, okay? Like, we couldn't have done that in 2006, 2010, whatever. That wasn't a thing. So,
Man, my big thing, we give these kids Chromebooks at school. They're so smart. They're brilliant. And it's like, I hate to brag on like that guy. It's a 12-year-old that just figured out how to buy stuff on the internet like it wasn't nothing.
Yeah, with his mother's credit card. And then, a month later, I don't know how it ended, but I'm just assuming a month later, mom gets the credit card statement. What is this? And then it's like from, I'm just making this up, THC whatever .net or whatever it was, right? And she's like, what? I knew you've been kind of quiet for a while, kind of thing. And it's like, this is a problem. And the other problem is there's so much peer pressure.
Yeah.
To like fit into this like crowd. And like, I've heard stories. I don't know names, but I hear stories like there's kids in the bathrooms, like they'll bring 15 or 20 of them into a school and start selling them to other kids. And it's like, dude, it's one of those things where if this is what I think should happen, because they're not taking it serious enough, I think, anywhere. I know that they have like the bathroom smoke detector things, like in the now, like it goes off if you're like vaping in the bathroom or whatever. Dude, I think you should walk through like kind of like a metal detector, right? In the morning, but not necessarily a metal. I mean, that's a good thing too, where you hear about school shootings and all that, right? But but what I'm getting at is like something that can like kind of pick up, like if you're carrying drugs or whatever into school, right?
Yeah.
And
listen, I get like I've worked at a school with wands, I've worked in a lot of alternative schools before I moved into this job, and it's a necessary thing sometimes in certain places. But also I've heard the other argument of it where it's like, we don't want school to be a prison, right? We want these kids to feel safe, and I don't know, man.
To me, that's a very liberal way of looking at it. Let's let the kids feel safe. And then you hear it's been a couple of different school shootings in the past few months. Yeah, everybody feels safe, but let somebody sneak
everybody feels safe until there's a gun in the classroom.
Yeah, or something, right? So like, come on, dude. You don't know when you got so many kids, thousands of kids or whatever in a school. Like, I don't know how many kids are at Ringgold or Heritage or whatever, 1,000, maybe 800, 1,000. Just throw that out there. Out of those, say 1,000 kids, you don't know, you got 5 or 6 or 800 of them that you don't know they're in counseling. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what their family life's like. You don't know. It goes back to, you can't really pigeonhole kids, right? Like you don't want to do that, but you also don't want to enable certain scenarios. And by saying, hey, let's keep everybody feeling safe and happy, that's not fixing, a lot of issues. And the main issue, especially in our county, is the drug pandemic that is like running rampant. Like the kid in my road down here, he's been at Gateway probably, I've lived here for about 3 years or whatever it is. He's probably been in Gateway the whole time I've been here. And every time he gets out, he gets popped again for getting high. Same kid over and over and over and over. And instead of trying to help that kid, right, the kid down the road, they just send him back. And the problem is when you go to Gateway in Catoosa County, everybody down there is doing it.
Yeah.
And then it's all on the buses too. So like if you ride the bus, you're doing it on the bus. So it's just counterproductive, the whole system in place. Does that make sense?
I'm hearing you, yeah. And I guess like to go back full circle with the social media, and this is like my philosophy with coaching and teaching. Like I just do my very, very best job I can to like love on the kids as best as possible. And like I just feel like that's the best thing you can do, man. Like love them up, let them know that they're welcome in your space, and try to create that environment on our wrestling team and in the classroom that's like not just you're welcome in my space, but we're all like creating that same environment. I think one thing I've always really enjoyed is like you build a bigger wall, or I'm sorry, build a bigger table, not a bigger wall. And that, like, if everybody does that, we stop seeing these kids that are like getting left out and getting upset to the point of making those crazy decisions. And hopefully that in doing that, you get rid of those. We start like seeing less stress in schools. We start seeing kids succeed more on tests because they're helping each other succeed.
Yeah.
And that in turn like gets rid of some of the drug problems, because it's not every kid just turning to drugs to get high. Man,
Right.
kids are smart. You know, they have access to tools to like learn things that aren't productive in school. They're still learning though. They're learning to like escape their issues through those drugs. And it's like when they have positive influences around them, they have good friends, they have people going to church, inviting them to church. You start seeing like those kids leave that stuff and get away from it because they don't really have time to do it, you know? Like if I'm at church, I'm busy. I'm busy going to church. If I get done with church and the next thing I know is some family over here is inviting us to dinner as a group, you know, that community involvement and feel, it all starts with somebody as a coach or a teacher just loving up that one kid and that other kid and that other kid until they start spreading it to their families and we start seeing a better community. So
I can agree with that. Yeah, man. You went
and I
back.
think that goes with what you said though. Like you can't. I don't want to pigeonhole those kids, man. I don't want to end like.
You don't want to give them idle hands. You just said it. I don't
Right.
have time for it. So
Even if they end up there, though, I'd say when they end up in Gateway, it's like you got to check on them. You got to check it. You still got to love them just the same, right?
I think the Gateway program is a terrible thing. I don't agree with it, and the reason I say that is because you're doing exactly what I said. You're throwing them away. It don't matter if the kid's you don't matter if he's into music or you got a girl that is into she plays basketball, or you got a kid that doesn't do anything. He's just a student or whatever it is. All those kids that are over there, and I'd say I'm just going to make up a number. I'd say 70% of them that are over there has something to do with a vape. I would dare say.
Yeah.
All right. And to just say, okay, well, this is what the book says here, do this. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to put all the kids that have emotional issues, that are struggling with something and trying to mask it in some kind of way, we're going to pile them up in one building and expect them to just stop doing it. Mm-hmm. No, it's just going to make it worse. And if that's the way the county decides and sees that, hey, this is how we're going to help kids, it's not a punishment. Like really, realistically, that's not a punishment. Like you're not being punished. You're just going to a different building and you really have more freedom.
Like, yeah, man, those jobs with the alternative schools, you have to be like a vulture over those kids. You really do, because you're right. I mean, it's 70% of them are over there for something like that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And they ain't stopping. Like
you pile them all in there, so you got 15 of them in there that are all in there for THC vapes, right? Oh, well, Jerry don't have one today, but Jim might, right? So it's like, like, dude, come on. I don't know. I just think that pigeonholing kids based off of bad decisions, especially like you said, their brains aren't developed. I just think that's a terrible idea. Now, until somebody speaks up enough to, like, I think now that we'll close this topic real quick on this. I'll say, since this is becoming a pandemic, I think there needs to be an addiction program in place for the Catoosa County school systems.
I think that's a good idea, man. I really do. I was kind of thinking the same thing. It's like we do have school counselors, and I love ours over here. They're doing a great. I've really sent a few kids up to them, and they come back, and I think in a little bit better place. And that's big. That's important. And I think that's another step that we add to it, though, is we gotta. You're right. You have to address the problem head on. We can't dodge around it and be like, okay, you're grounded. Go over here. Okay, you're back. Did it get fixed? Like, not really.
Nothing got fixed.
But that's where it's like, I'm not sure what the school's job is. It's like, are we responsible for that. But I agree. I think that'd be a really good program to start looking into in the schools, of saying like we can't help these kids. So
As a former, and I've never got this personal on this podcast, but as a former addict myself, I went to rehab in 2000, and I'm a
yeah,
real person, right? Like, I love my brand that's behind me, and I hope people don't like look down on our branding because of the truth here. I mean, it's not a bad thing. I've been sober for over 13 years. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. As a former addict myself, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I've heard people's stories in NA meetings and things like that. I've told my own story at times to help somebody else. I'll say this: for kids, like teenagers, anybody under the age of 18, there is nothing out there for drug addiction, for any kind of
really.
addiction, right? Like, I haven't found anything. Like, you can go and take a teenager to like an NA meeting, but what are you doing? You're taking them into a place where you got grown people that are on meth and
You're
whatever.
seeing darker things than what you're doing. Yeah.
Than what you should see. And so there's really not like a collaborative like place where, say you got a kid that, I'm just making this up. This is a scenario. Say like they got hurt, broke their leg or something, and they put them on some kind of pain medicine, right? And now they're like more and more and more of it. They don't have anywhere to go to talk to anybody about, hey, I'm struggling here. And there's a fear of like, hey, if I tell anybody I'm doing this, like, I'm going to get in trouble and I may go to jail or what. There's no
completely understandable right there too. That's like you said it perfectly right there. I've talked to kids and it's like, who do I talk to? I don't want to go to jail for it.
Right.
And it's like you're kind of in a rock and a hard place there. So it's like you're onto something here, I think, with that. That's a necessary thing for a community.
Well, instead of like, and then again, you said it best too a minute ago. Instead of, okay, well, you did this, now you're going to go here, now you're back. Did anything happen? No, it probably got worse. 99% of the time, it's going to get worse in that environment. And they can't talk about it. If you can't talk about it, if you have no support system, I think on the vape thing, I think there should be a tier system. And I think this would help. This is my opinion. And I may even go to the school board meetings and present this, to be honest with you. I may do that. And mainly because if I believe in something, I believe in it. Same way I believe in, no pun intended, but I believe in Matt Clash, right? I believe
there it is.
In Matt Clash. So anything I believe in, I'm going to fight for it. And I'll say this: there should be a tier system, right? Like, I think right now, if you, from what I understand, because Zach went through it bad. The THC thing, the vape, and even just a regular vape. I think the first offense is like 90 days in Gateway or something. And then the second offense is like a year. I don't know. It's like ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It's stout.
Yeah. So like, it should be a tier system. Okay. We got you with this. You failed a drug test. All right. Let's understand why you're doing this. All right. Let's try to understand that. Well, I want you have to attend, so many meetings, right? And maybe there's a drug counselor on the school in the school system, that sits down and understands where these kids are coming from and can write up a report that says, hey, this kid's having trouble at home. This kid's having trouble, they don't have food most of the time. This kid, whatever the scenario that he's trying to get, or he or she is trying to get away from. And instead of just, like I said, throwing them away, oh, they're gone for 3 months, 3 months. Oh, they're back. Nothing changed. So, like, I think if there was a tier system, and I'm not saying our county, I think every county, right?
I agree there. It's like, this is a good idea that you could push through. Like
let's have it.
I don't know what you run into. Like, I'm not like super familiar with all the topic, but like, if you can push through the insurance and the liability stuff with this is a great idea, man. Like, it's not, we're not lying by saying that it's a pandemic around not just our little area, man. Like, it's around the country. It's been every school I've been at. And it's like, we've all tried to stop it. Like, but at some point, like you said, I think you got to change. We got to fix it. We got to change and fix it and find something different. And I think, like you said, having a drug counselor on campus, I don't know what that looks like, and I don't know how that affects taxes and all that other stuff throughout. But
don't either.
Who cares? You know, I've always said, like, I'm not teaching because I'm getting paid bukus of money. I
right.
teach because I want to help these kids and help them have good lives. So
That should be the end goal for everybody, even the administrators in the school system. Like the goal here is to produce kids that are going to be successful and thriving adults. That should be.
I look back, like, I loved my experiences in high school and in middle school too, to be honest. And I want to see our kids have that same level of happiness when they graduate Heritage High School. I want them going to college and looking back with fond memories of high school, not like they felt like they're in prison for 4 years.
Right. Yeah. And to button this up, I'll say this: the system does need changed, and this is the statement I'll make to button this up. If you're a plumber, okay, and your toilet won't flush, are you gonna replace the dishwasher?
I would not replace my dishwasher there.
No. So like that's essentially what's happening with these kids that make mistakes. The toilet stopped up, instead of unstopping the toilet and getting to the root of the problem, they're going over here and doing something else. And I don't know. I'm totally against it. I don't know how we got on this topic for the entire episode, man, but I think it's a real episode. We talked about
It's a real topic, though. It's important. It happened. It's not real. It's out there. It's occurring every day, all the time.
It absolutely.
And it's something I could go for hours on. I hate to say it, like from both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I want to protect these kids, but as like an adult now, I also want to like fix the freaking issue.
That's the problem.
Like, the problem. How does that occur? Does it occur from being, what we're seeing right now with you is like the harshest freaking penalty. And then there's like, or do we have to like spend the next a long daggum time like spitballing ideas until it's fixed? And that's kind of where you end up, I guess, with it. So,
and I'll say this because and I'm not asking for any kind of anything. I just want to read this to you because I haven't said publicly what the problem was, but I think of how passionate I've been talking. I think probably people will figure that out on their own.
Yeah, I'm sure that they can read into it.
But I'll say this to you. Bryson goes and he talks to a guy. He goes twice a month. He's been talking to this guy for several years, and he enjoys it. He goes, he plays cards. He talks about, things in his life that he struggles with. He talks about, like pressure he has, things, whatever. I remember Matt had told me, his name's Matt. He's a really great guy. He told me, he said, sometimes he's got, competition anxiety. Like last year we went to Super 32, and I remember he had a session on Tuesday before, and he had like competition anxiety. And then there's other times where, he talks about his family dynamic, and he talks about his brother and whatever, it's just a way, an outlet, right?
Yeah.
He wrote this letter, and there's a line here I just want you to hear. I can attest to Mr. Drennan's commitment to maintaining his mental health and emotional well-being. However, despite his dedication, he continues to show signs of emotional distress that impact his ability to completely lead a healthy lifestyle. This is critical that he stay engaged.
Yeah.
So that line in itself, to me, is, when you said a harsh penalty, if you take a kid and one of the brightest spots in his life is something he's done his entire life. That kid has wrestled, I want to say 10 or 11 months a year since he was his second year wrestling. His first year, he just wrestled a regular season. He played baseball and whatever. The next year, he started wrestling 8, 9, 10 months a year. And whether he competed the whole year or not, he was on a mat. And to take the one bright spot, now I'm not saying don't punish him, but to take the one bright spot in his life away from him, and the same thing with other kids, if they do the same kind of thing and they have something they're good at, being in the band or whatever, and you take that away from a kid, you really think that that's going to end well?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not. And when we were kids, like you were talking about back on the line. Remember you said that you have nightmares of back on the line?
Oh yeah.
Dude, I didn't even do anything near to the extreme that, well, granted it was disrespectful, but I didn't do anything, near to like what Bryson has done, but that I got caught doing for one. Let's just throw that out there. With that being said, I was disrespectful to a teacher. I'll never forget it. His name's Mr. Brown. He's the over Walker County Schools now. He was my U.S. history teacher in high school. Great guy. And he caught me in the library not doing my work. I was like looking at other crap on the internet, And I don't know why, but I got so mad and I like cussed him out. Leave me whatever.
Yeah.
Just a teenage outburst. And Sean Gray was my head football coach in high school, and maybe one of the greatest people I ever met in my life, dude. Great guy. He's a principal at Southeast now. He was their head coach for several years. He met me in the office. He heard about it like immediately, right? We were in the middle of spring football practice. He met me in the office. He jerked a knot in my ass, and I needed it, right? Like he did. And he's like, you're going to pay for this today and from now on. Spring football back then lasted like 3 weeks, right? Back in my day.
Yeah.
And I had a shirt, and I'll never forget it. It said, "I survived the spring of 2005." And it had like a bunch of Ringo helmets like piled up on each other and like a tiger that's like out of breath, like laying there,
Yeah.
And it was a pretty cool shirt. I wish I still had it. But anyway, we'd finish practice, and we had tough like practice, but we didn't condition during the spring. Everybody's heading up to change clothes and go home, and there I am running 100-yard dogs for like an hour. And like he'd blow the whistle every time I'd run 100 yards. Every time he blew the whistle, I'd do an up down and keep going.
Yeah.
Every day I probably ran anywhere from, and this is no exaggeration, 20 to 40. Okay. Today they would probably consider that child abuse.
Yeah, probably.
With that being said, though, I never was disrespectful again.
Dude, listen, mine was a burpee mile, okay? And it, college guys, right? After about a few minutes of doing something they hate, they get a little disrespectful. So instead of a burpee mile, it turned into more like a burpee 2.5, 3 miles.
Yeah.
It turned into coaches ordering dinner into the gym while they watched us do burpees in a circle.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it, dude.
But that scenario, right, it changed your behavior, right?
Listen, I never left a practice not exhausted again. I promise you that. It was like we're emptying gas tanks no matter what, boys.
Yeah, so in that scenario, the reason I told that story and the reason you told that one, today, that would be considered child abuse, but in reality, when you got an athlete that makes a mistake, let coach punish him.
Yeah.
Let coach punish him. Let coach.
I think Michael Jordan, dude, said it best on that daggum documentary he did. Like, I promise, I'm never going to ask you to do something I haven't done.
Right.
Like, and I promise the things that I did that I thought were insane, I'm not going to ask you to do those either 95% of the time. Unless I have a fair enough reason behind it. Like, there's nothing I'm going to do that I'm, like, trying to make this bad for you. Like, I'm here to support you. Like we said it, I said it before. I was a highly successful high school wrestler. All I want for these kids is to be twice as successful as I was. I don't want them to have to go through the same freaking thing in college where I had to end up my senior year sitting outside of a cold arena in the middle of nowhere crying because I didn't accomplish my goals. Like, I want them to not have to deal with that ever because it sucks. It's a bad feeling. And you know how it is as an adult, man. These kids don't. They're not old enough. You regret things. You do have thoughts about it that aren't fun thoughts. It's not a big deal. It's not something I dwell on for more than 10 seconds at a time.
Right.
But there's plenty of times during the week that I'm like, man, I wish I could have won that last match made at NCAAs and just saw how good I could have done. And that's what I look at these kids. I'm like, guys, those are the memories you don't want to create. Because when you have them, they don't go. It's the same as social media. They don't go away. So you got to find ways to, like, make the most out of your time, whether it's in school, whether it's on the mat, anywhere. So,
yeah, time management, that's something else we could go on for hours. And I think we should definitely do this again at some point and talk.
Yeah, hit me up, man. I got a lot about that Ringgold Heritage and Lakeview rivalry. We could go on for a bit about it. So
that'll be interesting too. Like a real quick to kind of button things up, and I'll ask you a final question. Me and Steve Carpenter, he's been the trainer at Ringgold for like
I know Steve.
Great guy. We mentioned how Ringgold and East Hamilton should have a yearly duel, and we compared it to the like Catoosa Cup in football, right? Like we kind of compared it and call it because they're like what 9 minutes apart, like down Ottawa Ringgold Road. So
they're not far.
So that would be pretty cool. And in the wrestling space, like I think there's a chance that Ringgold, Lakeview, Heritage, there could be like we could get that duel every year, maybe a tri duel to be one of the biggest like events in the county. And the way to do that, like I want to throw this out too, and I've texted you about it. I think if they ever you have a club, Ringgold has a little youth club, Lakeview's trying to get one together. In reality, Ringgold and Lakeview's in the same, I think, 2A together. You're in 3A, right? Heritage is 3A.
Yep.
So, like, if there was a supplemental, like Mike Hatcher brought this up, he said, dude, like, I consider Young Guns Nashville supplemental, right? If there was a supplemental thing to bring all these kids together maybe twice a week, right? And just let, you know it and I know it. If you put the best kids, the kids together, they're going to bring everybody up together, right?
Right.
And the biggest like downside to that anybody's ever complained about is like, well, they may wrestle one day. Who cares, right?
Dude, listen, the best kids in the country, I hate to tell you this, they have to wrestle each other.
Yeah.
So what if they're 5 minutes apart? We did good. Our county looks phenomenal. We look like Bradley County. You see Bradley in Cleveland, man. They do it every year. So I promise you, nobody in that county feels bad for growing up beating the crap out of each other and then having to wrestle in the state finals. I promise you they don't feel bad.
They don't feel bad. And
I had to sit through the cookout line looking over after those Bradley Cleveland duels, watching our wrestlers sit with Bradley wrestlers in their cars. Like,
right.
They're friends. I promise.
So take that.
They ain't mad.
Put them all in a room twice a week. Find, this. I'm just throwing this out here. Supplemental, say twice a week. And it would be cool if it was on a rotating schedule, right?
Yeah.
For everybody. So, okay, like this week, Tuesday, I'm just making this up, right? It can be any day, whatever. This week, Tuesday is at Ringgold. This week, Thursday's at Heritage. Next week, Tuesday's at LFO. Rotate it where it fits everybody, gets a chance to kind of host these things. And then find, maybe the club coaches or something from each program to kind of come together and have like a basis of what we're going to do this week, what we're going to do next week. And then maybe on off season, let them break up, have fun with it, break them up, make dual teams out of it, and wrestle exhibition matches.
Or even this, 3 Catoosa County All-Star teams going down to Disney duels every year.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
We can take
options here.
Nobody gets butt hurt then. Everybody like, all right, hey man, we've got about 14-ish. I don't know if the numbers off the top of my head. I could find it in a day. But the number of state places, we could build a team out of that.
Yeah.
With quality starters. And then your next kids make your second team. And then your third team is your one that you put in that supplemental league they have.
Yeah.
And you have a great freaking summer trip where everybody's at the beach. All the families grow together. We're not cussing each other out in the stands. Right. But then, like, from there, we start copying that Cleveland Bradley duel. And you start bringing the lights in, bringing the music up, adding some smoke stuff to it. And that's what I tried to do at our duels last year at Heritage, and we're adding it back in this year. And you just make it's more fun. Like, nobody wants to go to the wrestling duel all day or for tournament for 12 hours and sit there all day. No music, just talking to the same people you have to talk to every day. It's just not fun. It's not.
Yeah.
But when we go to the football game, they're cranking up Metallica. They've got lights. I mean, I don't know if you've seen Wilson Central and Cleveland's new fields up there now. Those are amazing for high schools.
I've seen the Wilson Central maybe 2 years ago. I don't know if they've done something since. But
or the basketball court up there where they do the lights and all that. Oh, it's wild, man. Look into that. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like even like the Caden Henschel Muggsy match, like they were playing music in the background, had the strobe lights going. It was a cool little environment. But I like your idea of having like 3 teams, building your best team, your second team, your third team. have it to where like I thought of this. It could be named anything, but I thought of like Catoosa United, right?
Yep.
Have a cool little like some kind of cool logo, some kind of like have the A team say red, the blue, the B team's blue, the C team's orange,
Well,
whatever.
you got the best guy ever for doing logos with Quantel, man. He's a beast, dude.
He's my dog, man. Yeah, we're in this Bmoney Beastin thing together. He's great. We built like this whole thing together, and we're still pushing it, and we're working on Mat Clash Wave 2.
Yeah.
Eventually, the goal is to, you can start building your own kind of set. You can have a more offensive, more defensive match, So like, it's been really cool. Like, I love that guy. He's one of the greatest people. But real quick, man, to button this up, because we went about 45 minutes over what I normally do. Dude, let's throw out what do you expect your goals to be for this year, for your club, for the middle school, for your high school? What do you think's attainable in this year?
This, man, I talk to our kids a lot about this. I tell them to set really high goals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan. I remember one of my biggest regrets is like, as I got older, I thought my goal was to wrestle at a Division I college.
Right.
And I met that, and then I did a really terrible job of resetting goals from there. And I kind of fell off, and I ended up at King and just, had what I consider a lackluster career. And that's where I tell these kids, I'm like, guys, just say the craziest thing you can think of. And let's fight for it. Let's put ourselves in an ability. I want to see us be able to play in state this year. That's a very high goal, and I promise I'm not trying to talk crap to any other teams out there. I ain't trying to be bulletin board material, but I want to see these kids come out and like actually scrap. We're really young. I've had a great group of 8th graders that are 9th graders now that put in a ton of work all summer long, and I've had to practically kick them out of the wrestling room at least 3 days a week. And I'm excited to see what they do. I'm excited to see them grow through this first part of the year where it's a little tougher. And I'm excited to see how they come out on the other side, because I have a lot of belief in them. And I think if they can come out a little mentally tough from it, with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, the technique is far and away there. The conditioning will far and away be there. I think that's where it just comes into, hey, it's not about winning and losing. It's about going out there and scrapping hard. Like, if you can go and, like we said, fix it, you're going to give up takedowns here and there. You're going to take bad shots here and there. How do you fix it? You get right back up to your feet and go get another takedown, or do you lay on your face? And that's, we could go from not making it to state again, or we can challenge for a placement. So I think our goal at the high school is to place. Middle school, I think we're right there again with Ringgold, and I'm not sure of all the teams in GSC yet this year. I'm getting a little more familiar with them, but I think us and Ringgold should have stout teams. Like I said, Coach Hunter is freaking awesome, man. I'm so blessed to have him as part of this staff. I bounce ideas off him constantly. I'd like to see them make it to that middle school state duels that y'all went to.
Yeah.
We did that my 8th grade year, and it like same as Ringgold, man. We took a bunch of first year 8th graders to it, and I think we finished like top 4, something like that.
Yeah.
I can't tell you off my dad would know amazingly quick, but we did well. So that's something that I'm like, I want to see them get back to doing that, especially if Ringgold's there, man. Like, we got to keep up with y'all. It's an arms race out there. So
it's actually the youth club, I think, for you guys is going to be the key to that.
That's what I'm looking at it as. And then with our youth club, we last year we took about 9 or 10 to Kingsport for youth nationals. We had 1 national champion and 1 runner-up, and me and you both know what that is. So, but it's a good way to cap off that youth beginner league season. Like you said, I'm not minions. I'm not running these like kids that are going to Tulsa. It's on our schedule this year, so fingers crossed a couple of them, get an itch for it. But that's kind of my goal, is to get about 15 to 20 up to Kingsport this year and hopefully have enough to have a duels team for it. If I can do that, I feel like we've made a good step in the right direction this year with the club. So,
yeah. And, the whole situation with levels and things, like, the truth is, dude, like right now Super 32 is going on right now, right? And
Yeah.
you look at, you know some of the best kids, in our area. Like, I was looking at a couple results a few hours ago, like, because high school started early this morning. Dude, you just because you lose doesn't make you a bad wrestler.
Man,
Like,
I,
there
I
are
was
so
telling
many.
Caitlin this morning. I placed every year in high school. I was 2-time champion, all that great stuff. My record at Super 32 was like 3-8. Like,
Yeah,
it was like, I can't tell you how hard the draws I was getting, and like, there's no shame in going to these, but you got to do it. If
yeah.
you want to be good in college, you got to do it.
Bryson, his first year, second year going, that's the only tournament in the country he hasn't placed at. Super
Yeah,
32.
it's nasty.
He placed at Tulsa. He placed at Kids Freestyle Nationals. He placed at just about everything except for Super 32. And his first year, he beat a kid from West Virginia. And he beat I think a Virginia kid, and then him and his PA kid went to double overtime. He got a takedown on the edge of the mat. They started. They didn't give it to us. They said the kid was out, but his feet were in. And Matt Pitts lost his mind, threw his hat, I think, at a referee. Anyway, we ended up losing the match in like triple overtime or double overtime or something. And then he wrestles this kid nobody ever heard of. That's a crazy thing about Super 32 too, is even if you think you know the best kids in the country, you don't know. And
Oh, buddy, you don't.
we pulled a kid from Nevada. Now, right off the rip, he takes the kid down. He puts you on his back. I'm like, oh, yeah, he's going to win this match. He goes up like, now this is before the rule changes, so it's like, what, 5-0 or whatever. And he goes down in the second period. He's like, because, I was like, oh, you got to lead, we'll get an escape and a takedown. That's kind of how we'll play it. That kid was phenomenal on top. He ends up taking the lead. He ends up beating Boston. I think the final score was like 11-5, like, because we picked bottom. He turned him over, and he couldn't stop it. And then the third period, the kid picked top, and he got tilted some more. And you just never know. But dude, just whenever you lose or you get beat up some, there are a lot of amazing guys out there, but there's somebody else out there that'll beat that guy. So it's you're never. Pitt said it the best. You're never going to reach that platform that I'm done, right? Like, it never ends. You're always going to be chasing that, right? So, like,
Beautiful.
wins and losses, they fade. You don't remember them all. You remember funny ones like that, right? But like, that goes away. So yeah, it's just that constant, chase, right? And I think that's what makes wrestling a great thing for kids. Dude, this has been a really cool episode. We kind of got real about some really big issues, like, in the area and the country. I think that's something that needs to be talked about. If anybody sees this in the county and wants to talk to me, I will sit down with you. I will throw out a plan. I will help. I'll volunteer to help. I'll talk to any kid in the county. I'll say, hey, man, like, let's fix this. What's going on? Yeah, I'll help any way I can. With that being said, dude, this has been awesome. This has been the realest episode that I've done. We've done a lot of fun ones so far. Me and Khalil laughed for freaking hours, man.
Dude, shout out Khalil. His was a good one.
Man, we just laughed
He's
the
doing
whole
a great
time.
job.
He's actually hopping back on. I want to say Sunday, and we're going to do a round 2. And just because we had so much fun on the first one, and we're going to talk about, like, we had this idea for a Georgia Who's Number One, and Georgia Grappler actually reached out to me and said that they're putting that in the works to do it at Life University.
Big. That's big.
So, like, my idea was to take all the state champions every year. We have 7 classifications or whatever, and make a bracket based off results, like in the state finals. But then Charlie Morris brought up, like, well, you're going to have head-to-head matchups, check and make sure. So I was like, okay, let's put a panel together of people that can kind of vote who's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seed or whatever. And maybe you got a match that was 2-1 in the finals, and you take the second place guy and put him and make an 8-man bracket. Whoever the best runner up was gets the 8 seed, right? Like, there's a way to kind of do that. And I don't think it should, like I said before, affect recruiting or anything like that. Just a cool event for the state of Georgia.
Right.
And I think that's what we're going to kind of talk about, like how we think it should be structured, how it could be really cool. Kind of maybe add in some of that. Let's get some smoke and lights and some Metallica playing. maybe live stream it, something like that. That'd be pretty cool. But man, Landon Reed, great time. We covered a lot of real topics. We went an hour. This is probably the longest episode of the Bmoney Beastin podcast. I appreciate your time, man. I wish Heritage the best in 2024 and beyond. I hope that you guys reach all your goals, and I'm having fun to watch you guys continuously get better. And I love keeping track of you on social media. Keep that up. Keep that community. And dude, I appreciate your time, man.
Hey, thanks for all you do for the community, man. I appreciate it. It's important. Wrestling's a big deal to me. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Episode 21 of the Bmoney Beastin podcast is in the books.